Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, and I'm joined again by our special guest at VR2, Brandon Martin. Again, Brandon, thank you for joining me on the podcast. We have some more good news to get to for Tennessee recruiting, but before we get to that, I do want to thank all of you who are listening along at home, at work, wherever you may be. If you want to download the podcast, we are available on Apple Podcasts. If you have an Android device, you can find us on there. YouTube's the way a lot of you listen, so we appreciate that too. We're at RockyTopInsider.com, RockyTopInsider on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find VR2 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. It's _VR2_ on Twitter. And you can just search VR2 on Instagram and Facebook, and they're part of the Sports Illustrated family. They do fantastic work over there. So check them out if you haven't already. But I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you probably do already know about us and them. So Brandon, let's get into it here. We have a few topics we want to discuss on this episode. Tennessee gets another commitment. It's been a little bit, it's been a little bit since an official commitment. As we talked about last podcast, there was one in-state kid who tried to commit and it didn't happen and all that stuff. But now Tennessee does get another in-state commit, and it's one of their top targets, and I think we talked about it in the last episode. Not just one of Tennessee's top in-state targets, but one of their top targets overall, and that is Hudson Wolfe, the huge 6'6", 240 tight end who plays at Hardin County in Savannah, Tennessee. On Rivals, he's actually the number one prospect in the state of Tennessee, a top 50 player, not rated as highly on 247 Sports, but I think he's going to be getting a little bit of a boost here sometime soon. He's a 4-star in the composite. One of the almost just right outside the top 5 players in the state in the composite for them. But Brandon, before we kind of get into what he brings to Tennessee's class, and we touched on that a little bit last episode too, I think you and I both think he's a fantastic prospect. I want to talk about the fact that you look at maybe not even a month ago, maybe even earlier than that, but at least you look back a month ago or so, definitely when he released his top 5 at the end of March. It seemed, all indications were pointing towards Wolfe going to Ohio State. It seemed like they had all the momentum. I think you had mentioned on the podcast before that you didn't think he was going to be coming to Tennessee at a certain point in his recruitment. It seemed like he was going to go to Ohio State, and that Tennessee was going to miss out on both in-state tight end targets that he had with him and Brittingstool. But then Tennessee was able to come in, and over the last few weeks especially, they really turned the tide, and now he's committed to Tennessee. I don't have, I don't know all the details and stuff like that about how that all went down, why he changed his mind, but it definitely seemed like Ohio State was the clear favorite for a while there, and now Tennessee gets him. It's a huge get for Tennessee, not only because of what we'll touch on here in a minute, how much we think he can make an instant impact, but Tennessee got him from the likes of Ohio State. He had legit offers from Alabama, LSU, some really high-profile schools, and Tennessee beat them out to get Hudson Wolfe. And I think it's worth mentioning that, yes, he's an in-state kid, but Tennessee had ground to make up, and they made up that ground, and now they haven't committed.
Well, and Tennessee didn't just have ground to make up. Now, I understand that Hudson's an in-state kid. He's from Savannah, Tennessee, but you got to remember here, Tuscaloosa's closer to where he's from than Knoxville is. He's closer to Alabama's campus than he is to Knoxville. He's from the western part of the state. He's been to Alabama several times. He has visited Alabama on multiple occasions. Alabama was genuinely, seriously interested in Hudson Wolfe for a lot of the same reasons that Tennessee is, because he fits what they want to do on offense and can be that blocking tight end that's also a really good receiver. He can do everything. I think maybe normally if you go head-to-head with Alabama, that's the headliner in anything if you come out on top. But for Tennessee, it may be going head-to-head with Ohio State and winning this recruiting battle, because I think this is the first kid Ohio State's wanted. They've not got this cycle.
It feels like it, yeah.
As much of a hot streak as Tennessee was on, and as good a recruiting stretch as Tennessee had, and they're still behind Ohio State in the rankings, and everyone knows that. Ohio State got everybody they have wanted. I think this is probably the first legitimate recruiting L they have taken this cycle. So Tennessee being able to go head-to-head with Ohio State and head-to-head with Alabama That's a big deal. Now, Hudson has been a priority target for this Tennessee staff for a couple years now. He has been the guy they wanted. Now, they like Jake Brenningstool at Ravenwood a lot, but they have always kind of put Hudson out at Hardin County as a bit of a higher priority. And I don't think that's saying anything bad about Brenningstool. I think it's more just that Hudson's a better fit for what Tennessee wants to do. But you're talking about a staff coming in and going head to head with Ohio State and Alabama, and Ole Miss got involved there later. And all three of those schools much close. Well, Columbus not so much, but Ole Miss and Alabama closer than Knoxville to him. And Tennessee winning that battle, that's a big pull for them. That's a really big pull for them on an elite player. I think you're seeing Tennessee's some of these staff changes paying off. Of course, Niedermeyer was the tight ends coach, but now Joe Osave is the tight ends coach. I'm sure Niedermeyer was involved there. I'm sure Osave was involved there. You look at what Joe Osave has done this year. You know, we had questions about him. We knew he was a good coach. We knew he was decorated in the JUCO ranks. How was he going to stack up as a recruiter for the big boys? Well, as a guy who's been heavily involved with the guys Tennessee's pulled out of the Northeast and pulled out of St. Francis Academy, he was involved with Miles Campbell, who don't sleep on that kid. He's going to be Miles Campbell's going to be a 4-star tight end before the cycle's over with. Tennessee's going to land 2 of those pure 4-star highly ranked tight ends now if they can keep these guys in the class. And Osave's been heavily involved there. He's been heavily involved with Hudson Wolfe. He's part of the reason that Hudson decided to come to Tennessee. So, I mean, you're seeing some of those staff changes pay off. You're seeing, I think, Tennessee's consistency and having prioritized Hudson for so long pay off, because I didn't think they were going to win this. I think I said it on the podcast several weeks ago. I thought he was going to Ohio State. I thought it was done. So I was wrong, and I'm very happy that I was wrong. But I was wrong there, and Tennessee comes back, pulls probably their highest rated in-state player. There's a couple other guys in-state that they really like and that they want pretty bad, but I think Hudson is probably the top of their priority list for a long time. At least I know they like a lot of guys in-state really well. Right now I know they like Walker Merrill a lot. I know they like Elijah Howard a lot that they've had committed, but I think Hudson's probably the biggest name they have been on hard the longest. So this is a big recruiting win for this staff.
Yeah, I remember when Tennessee first offered Wolfe back in, you're talking about them making him priority and stuff. They offered him back in January of last year, so he's been on the radar for a while. And yeah, this is it can't be understated, like you said, about how big of a win it is because of the momentum that. And really just the power that Ohio State has as a recruiting power, and always, but especially this current cycle, like you said, they've not missed on anyone. This is kind of their first miss they've had. Talking about him as a player, though, we'll go ahead and get into that. I know you and I both, when Miles Campbell committed, talked about how we think he is a great fit for what Jim Chaney likes to do with tight ends in his offense, and especially with kind of the way offenses are now more spread out and things like that, what tight ends are used in the passing game and everything. But Campbell also has a pretty good foundation and some solid skills as a blocker, and looks like he can build on that. To me, while I think Campbell is a good fit for certain systems, and I think he could definitely flourish at Tennessee, I think Hudson Wolfe's one of those kids that he can fit in at just about any offense in any school at any level. He's, like I said earlier, 6'6", 240. Watching his film, he's more athletic than you think he'd be at his height, especially. He's not just a statue out there that you kind of just throw the ball up to and he can kind of grab it. He actually can make, he has a pretty good catch radius. He can make some pretty impressive catches. He's a really good blocker already. He's going to have to fine-tune some of his techniques, in my opinion. But, man, Brandon, you and I both have said it, I think maybe on the last podcast, too. I know you and I both said it in text messages with each other. He looks about as ready-made to play as a high school junior, senior, whatever, as an incoming freshman at tight end that Tennessee's had in, a long time. It feels like he could come in and be an immediate starter for Tennessee next season, assuming, he stays healthy and assuming that none of Tennessee's tight ends that are currently on the roster has some kind of big breakout year this year and, assert themselves for next year. Assuming all that, because I don't see any of Tennessee's tight ends this year really, bursting onto the scene and having a type of season where they really assert themselves. I really think Wolfe next season comes in and he's got a role. I don't know that he starts immediately. He may start as the season goes on, but I think he has some type of role in Tennessee's offense next year. Because watching his film, he plays at wide receiver, he plays at a tight end, he plays at H-back. He can do a lot of different things, and I just think he is a very gifted, very ready to play type of player, and he's going to be an early enrollee, so that really only helps his cause to be able to come in and contribute immediately at Tennessee.
Hudson's going to play early. He's too complete a tight end. Hudson Wolfe was going to play early wherever he went, wherever he chose. He's not just – we talked about Miles Campbell. Miles Campbell is a solid blocker. He's got good foundational technique. He's got that little bit of a mean streak. He's a solid blocker, but Miles Campbell's where he separates himself is with his athleticism and his ability as a receiver. When you look at Hudson Wolfe, you're going, okay, name a job that any offense anywhere wants a tight end to do. Congratulations, Hudson Wolfe's good at it right now. As a blocker on film, they show plays where they will pull him back across the formation and let him be the lead blocker on a counter play. He'll pull all the way from the backside and come through and lead the play. He'll lead blocks on the outside. He'll play H-back. He can one-on-one block defensive ends. He gets to the second level and really does a nice job on linebackers. His blocking is already at a very, very good level. Now, he's going to have to clean some technique up, but that's most even offensive linemen. When you go to college, you got to tighten your technique up. But his blocking is very advanced. It's the little things about the tight end position that Hudson has already got a grasp of. Wolfe already understands. One of the things I saw on film from him that I really love is when we talk about a double move from a wide receiver, everybody knows what you mean with a hitch and go or an out and up, or a slant and go. I'm going to show you the slant. I'm going to show you the hitch. I'm going to work you short. I'm going to work you short. And then when I feel you starting to want to jump that route, I go back and tell my quarterback, and we talk to the offensive coordinator and say, okay, it's time to hit him with a double move. I give you the jab step for the hitch and the jab step for the slant. When the corner jumps, you flip your hips and go upfield and hit somebody for a shot play. Wolfe is doing that in a way that only really tight ends can. Wolfe is so good at getting to the second level on blocks. He gets upfield, and when he goes to go get a linebacker to block, it looks like a route. He releases the same way to go up and get somebody, and he'll hit a linebacker hard and take you totally out of the play. Well, when Hardin County likes to go play action, they like to throw out of it. The quarterback will go into that long play action fake. Wolfe releases and goes up like he's going for a linebacker. And as he goes to square this linebacker up, you'll see the linebacker turn and he stops. He's reading run action in the backfield. This is the way Wolfe has been attacking him, and he'll square up to take on this block to try to get off it in a minute and go get involved in the run game. And Wolfe will just kind of bend by him and keep going. And now you've got a linebacker that's flat-footed that was ready to take on a run block who's bit on the run fake completely, and this 6'6", 245, 250 tight end that runs like a deer has just gone by him. You're not ever going to get turned around in time, and it's a drop-in-the-bucket throw for a quarterback for a huge gain. Wolfe does all the things on film that when you think about a young quarterback, you always talk about a young quarterback wants a good running game and a safety blanket at tight end. Mm-hmm. And that's what Wolfe is. He is big. He's got long arms. He has excellent hands. If he gets a hand on it, he's coming up with the catch. That big catch radius means the ball doesn't have to be on target all the time. He can make up for a mistake from the quarterback. He's really adept at getting out and feeling coverage and getting himself positioned between the defender and his quarterback and showing the quarterback his numbers. Again, that big catch radius, when it comes, he's going to be able to get the ball. And then he's a good enough athlete to take a little short 3 or 4 yard dump off check down. And if he breaks a tackle or catches somebody out of position, he can rumble 20 or 30 yards. He's a good athlete. He's faster than people think. And a fair amount of the guys that are going to be able to catch him are going to have a tough time bringing him down. You know, it's like a dog chasing cars. You can catch him, but what are you going to do with him when you do? He's just so complete. There's so much polish. Now he's going to have a jump in competition, a really steep jump in competition when he gets to the next level. Competition jump is going to be a lot steeper for him than someone like Miles Campbell. He's going to be seeing a different caliber of athlete. But what you see from Wolfe is that the nuances of the position, the polish, the ability to already understand how to chip a defensive end and get out, or how to come in and block for a second or two and then without tipping your hand very slowly release out and get into the flat on a delayed release and be open for a short third down conversion. Or what he's really outstanding at is that little block down near the goal line, at the, inside the 5 yard line block, hold your man up, let him think he's by you, release out into the flat and just get 2 steps over the goal line, catch the ball right in front of the sideline, score a touchdown. That is an art form, and Wolfe has already got that down. He has the finer points of this position down already. He's going to be an asset.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, I would say I guess the biggest concern with him would be the fact that the competition is not very good where he is, and that's going to be like you said, a big jump for him once he gets to Tennessee. But that's again where I mentioned earlier, where him being an early enrollee is really going to come in handy. It's I think that part for him, and now he's on pace to be an early enrollee. Things could change, but I don't think it will. But he is on pace to be an early enrollee, and I think that's going to be huge. I don't know who all in Tennessee's class currently committed will end up being early enrollees for Tennessee, but right now Wolfe is tracking to be one. I think Caden Salter's tracking to be one. Kamar Wilcoxon and Tylen Evans are all tracking to be early enrollees as well. And I think Isaac Washington, this is all according to 2R7 Sports, the stuff they have on there. I think Isaac Washington is also tracking to be an early enrollee. So you have a good handful of guys already that are going to be early enrollees potentially, and you could probably have a couple more added to that list between now and December as well. But I think Hudson Wolfe is fantastic. I think he's a great athlete, great prospect, and you mentioned his speed. That was kind of something that surprised me more watching his film, was the fact he's a little faster. I thought he's not gonna burn you with his speed, but as you said, if he gets by a guy and he has open field, he's gonna grab those chunks of yards and he's not gonna look back. He's got a long stride, he can kind of gallop a little bit, as I'd like to say, and I think he's a phenomenal player who I think is going to be able to come in and as you said, to have an instant impact and play immediately at Tennessee. Brandon, our last topic here for this episode of the podcast, looking at other in-state targets. Hudson Wolfe was an in-state target for Tennessee, committed to the Vols. Tennessee not really as high on the in-state kids this cycle as they were in the 2020 class, but they're still going after a few. They've still got a few committed. Obviously, you have Hudson Wolfe, you have Walker Merrill, and you have Elijah Howard, who are all committed to Tennessee from the state of Tennessee. Who, in your opinion, are some of Tennessee's top remaining in-state targets? Because I look at the list of, there are a few that are committed. We'll touch on a couple of those guys here in a minute who are committed elsewhere, or maybe in Dietrich Pennington's case, I'll just go ahead and mention him, who didn't include Tennessee in his top lists. We'll talk about them in a second. But of the guys who are uncommitted, we touched on at least a couple of these guys, I think, in the last podcast, but I think Prince Colley and William Parker are probably the two that immediately pop into my head as far as the in-state kids that Tennessee's still going after. Are there any other ones you would add to that list before we touch on guys like Junior Colson and Dietrich Pennington?
I think the two big ones left in state for Tennessee are going to be Coley and William Parker. I think those are the two guys that they're really looking at. I think there's definitely interest in Trey Curry. I think there's definitely interest there. Again, we talked last time he had wanted to commit to Tennessee. We don't know what the situation was, if the coaches didn't want to take his commitment or if they wanted to wait just a little while at the time. We're not really sure. But anytime you have a kid who had wanted to give that commitment, who is that caliber of an athlete, I think Curry is a guy Tennessee's going to continue to evaluate because he is a good athlete, and I think he can help this team. So he's one to watch. And we'll talk more about Parker and Coley in a minute, but Jaden Keller is another one. Jaden Keller is an athlete, kind of plays all over the field, a lot like Curry. He plays at Tennessee High School up in Bristol. Mm-hmm. Keller is a really versatile kid, sort of plays all over the field. Again, a lot like Curry, a lot like Kaman Marley that we have seen. I don't think he's quite the athlete that Marley is, but in that same vein of, man, he can help you 3 or 4, 5 different spots. You got to figure out, what is he though? I think that was the difference in when you have a kid like that. It can help you at 5 spots. What is he? You look at a guy like Marley and go, well, 3 of the spots that he looks like he could play, he could start. So we're going to take him. I don't really care where he lands. He's good enough to start in 3 spots right now. We'll figure out what he is when he gets here, but he helps us. Mm-hmm. I think Curry and Keller are both guys that you look at and go, okay, they're going to need a little more development. I might have to figure out a little more what they are. They're going to have to really separate themselves and show me where it is they shine. But I think there's some interest in Keller. There's some interest in Curry. A guy who is currently committed elsewhere that I don't think Tennessee is going to go away on. Kendrick Breedlove committed. Kendrick Breedlove from Pearl Cone in Nashville committed to Ole Miss, and I don't think Tennessee's done there. They liked Breedlove a lot. Breedlove's had a lot of offers. He's had a lot of interest from schools. He's a very good corner. Reminds me a lot of Rashawn Golden in his build and kind of the way that he plays. That's who he's reminded me of since I first saw him. At Pearl Cone, he plays both ways. I think he's probably going to play defense in college. But Breedlove is a guy I don't think Tennessee's going to go away on. Depending on how the rest of their corner board shakes out, they may depend on how hard they try to get back in there. Quentin Barnes at Cane Ridge High School in Antioch.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up, and Javon Nelson. I asked your thoughts on those 2 guys too.
Barnes is a guy Tennessee has had on campus. Mm-hmm. They've had him on campus. I'm interested to see, because Barnes, I've seen Barnes quite a few times. I've seen him a couple times in pads, and I've seen him in 7-on-7 as well. Barnes is a very strong receiver, very, very strong receiver. His physicality is what really stands out about him to me. I do think Tennessee is interested there, and I think Barnes is definitely going to be a high-end Power 5 receiver. I know Tennessee's interested. His offer list is outstanding. He has been interested in Tennessee. He has been there on visits. But I'm also not sure that Tennessee isn't, unless they can land a really, really elite top flight wide receiver. I kind of think Tennessee might be done at receiver. You've got some guys in this class that are pure wide receivers. You have a couple more of these guys like Curry and Keller we were talking about, and Kaman Marley, that could play multiple positions. Somebody could wind up at receiver. Elijah Howard's in that bunch too. He could wind up at receiver. I don't know that unless it's a really elite guy that Tennessee's going to push real hard for too many more receivers in this class. And they like who they've got. Now, if somebody were to leave the class, the guy that I would look at maybe to potentially leave is Rock Taylor. I think that, and I'm not saying I think Taylor's going to go, but I think of the guys Tennessee has right now, if someone was going to go somewhere else, I think it'd probably be Taylor. I think Taylor still likes Auburn a lot, and that I don't think that his recruitment is done. maybe if you lose someone like that, Tennessee pushes more on Barnes. But I think Tennessee may be done unless it's a Deion Colsey type receiver. Another guy at Cane Ridge that is going to be interesting to watch this year is Quantarius Lusk. Lusk is a defensive lineman. He's kind of a hybrid type guy. I'm not really sure where he's going to fit. He didn't get to play at all last year. He came into his last season was junior year. He came in as a 4-star prospect. His offer list is outstanding. Messed his knee up, I believe, early in the season and didn't play at all last year. This will be his senior campaign. He's going to be playing on a Cane Ridge team that is loaded. That Cane Ridge team has got a bunch of talent on it, and he is going to have a lot of eyes on him this season. He's going to get there. There are going to be a lot of big time coaches there recruiting these wide receivers, but they've offered Lusk at one point or another as well. Tennessee is one of those places that has offered Lusk. The Vols need some help still on the defensive line. It's going to be a big D-line class. Lusk is a kid that has got a frame to fit what Tennessee wants to do. How he comes back from this knee is going to be interesting. But that's a name you might see. I think you could see rise late if he recovers from that knee and he bounces back. This is a kid who was really highly thought of by a lot of teams. If he's healthy off that knee and he puts together some good tape, this is a kid that could rise up boards late, and you could see maybe a name that crops up later in recruiting cycles. I think teams are going to have to watch him play, but that's a name to watch in state as well.
That's good to know. That's a lot of good intel there about some in-state kids. I actually didn't know about him, so that's really good to know. A guy that to keep your eye on to see how like you said, how he progresses from that injury and maybe what he can do as a senior this year. Brandon, I'm going to list off a few names here of in-state kids to kind of round out the podcast here, and most of them are committed. There's one, notably Dietrich Pennington, who is not, but still didn't have Tennessee in his list of top teams. But I'm going to list off some of these guys who it seems like, maybe the boat has or hasn't sailed on Tennessee. And I want you to talk about, briefly on kind of all these guys, who you think Tennessee has the best chance of still being in with and maybe flipping or getting interested or getting them back interested into Tennessee before December, before February, and which ones you think the boat really has sailed on. And that would be Junior Colson, who's committed to Michigan, Dietrich Pennington, who I said isn't committed elsewhere but doesn't have Tennessee in his top group of teams, Eli Sutton, who is committed to North Carolina, and you already mentioned Kendrick Breedlove, so that was another guy I was going to bring up, so that's kind of, I guess, take him off the list a little bit. And then Jamarion Gooch is another one that I think a lot of offense have mentioned, who's an in-state kid who is an offensive lineman who plays at the Kings Academy, who's committed to Auburn. So of those kind of four names, you have Gooch, you have Eli Sutton, you have Dietrich Pennington, and you have Junior Colson. Which of those do you think Tennessee has the best chance of still being in with, and which of these guys do you think Tennessee that the ship has just sailed at this point?
I think Tennessee's best shot is probably still with Junior Colson. I don't think Tennessee is going to go away in that. They have been heavily involved with Junior for a long time. They want Junior bad. They've made that really clear. And they have under Jeremy Pruitt, they have beaten Michigan in most of the recruiting battles where they have both been involved. Mm-hmm. I think Tennessee is probably looking no further than a couple of years ago when they landed Eric Gray, who had been committed to Michigan early, later in the season backed off, winds up coming to Tennessee, and the rest at this point is kind of history. I think Tennessee probably feels confident that over a long haul, they can beat out Michigan. Now, they may beat Michigan, they may not. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play out. But I know Tennessee still sees Junior as a priority. And until Junior tells them, no, I'm done, I'm shutting this entirely down, I think they're going to keep trying. And persistence has paid off for this staff. They've shown that. That's kind of where I put Dietrich Pennington as well. Tennessee's not going to go away on him. They're just not. Vols are not going to go away on Pennington. They like him a lot. Until he just tells them, hey, stop calling me, I think they're probably going to be involved there, and they're probably going to look there. I think Tennessee actually probably has a better chance with Colson than with Pennington. His is going to be an interesting one to watch. Eli Sutton is, for everything I can tell, he's done. I think he's North Carolina through and through. And, of course, everybody who listens to this podcast knows how high I am on him. I think he's going to be a stud out there for the Tar Heels, but I think he's done. I think Breedlove is going to be a guy that Tennessee could get back in on. I don't think that one's done yet. I'll be interested to see how that progresses. And as far as Jamarion Gooch goes, I like Jamarion Gooch a lot. I think he's a really big, really athletic for his size, offensive tackle. That's a position Tennessee needs. Auburn's going to be tough to beat out at this point, but it's a long season. Tennessee needs offensive tackles. I don't know how Tennessee sees the rest of their board, so I think Gooch is a kid that the Vols could come back to and really try to push for if that's who they wanted. If they decided they really wanted Gooch, I think that's one they could probably fight their way back into. But I think Tennessee wants to see the rest of their board shake out just a little bit first. I think a lot of things with Gooch will depend on what William Parker does. William Parker, formerly William Griffin, at Pearl Cone that we've talked about a lot. Griffin and Gooch would probably fill a pretty similar role. Griffin can play anywhere on Tennessee's defensive line as well, but I think he's best suited, or Parker rather, I think he's best suited as a right tackle. He is a big, strong athlete. He is in incredible condition. He does not fade. He's a mauler at that right tackle. If he gets a hold of you, you are going for a ride, and it's going to end with you getting slammed. He punishes people when he blocks. He opens those holes up. I think he would be able to make an impact for Tennessee early, but because of Tennessee's tackle depth and prospects, he's not going to have to. He's going to should get some time to be refined, but I think he would be a big target. I think what happens with him will dictate how much Tennessee tries to get back involved with Gooch. I think what happens with Amarius Mims and how Tennessee feels like that's going could also impact whether they decide to jump back in on Gooch. I think Diego Pounds is another guy you're going to have to watch out of North Carolina to see how that develops. The other guy that we were going to talk about in state, and I want to give him his due because I'm really high on him as well, is Prince Coley at David Crockett High School. And this kid plays everywhere. I mean, on offense, he is a legitimate number one wide receiver for this team, and on defense, he plays everywhere. He primarily plays at linebacker. You don't run across a lot of kids that play those two positions. There's not a lot of overlap there. You don't have a lot of kids that are a wide receiver that can run straight past a corner and then a linebacker who can blow running backs up. And Coley can do both. He's a very, very versatile player. I think he doesn't play the same type of competition, and he doesn't have as much polish or quite the explosive athleticism that a guy like an Owen Pappoe had, or that a Smile Munden has. But I think he's that type of player. I think he's that type of defender that you saw in Pappoe and you see in Munden, that you can put him at a ton of different spots. You can put him all over the back seven of your defense. Whatever you're running, he can play it. And he can go all over the place. He can make an impact wherever you want to use him. He's very intelligent. His offer list is blowing up. Now, he's not seen quite that competition. And again, he's not that kind of explosion of an athlete. But he has that versatility, and that's a guy I'd like to see Tennessee take. I think on Tennessee's board, you're probably going to have to see what happens with Munden. I think it's going to depend on how Tennessee feels about their chances with Colson. I think where Naquan Brown decides to go could factor into that. But Coley is a guy that is really rising up boards nationally. I think he's a really good player that Tennessee, I don't want to necessarily say should be the favorite for, but I think if the Vols pushed hard there and decided they wanted him, they'd be tough to beat.
Yeah, I'm a big Prince Collie fan. I got to talk with him not long after Tennessee officially offered him. As you said, he's very smart. Him and his family, they've really prioritized academics, and he's just a very, very good kid to talk to. He's one of my favorite interviews I've done with a recruit, just because he was very easy to talk with. You could tell he has a very good head on his shoulders. He's raised very well by his family who moved here from. Oh goodness, I can't remember where they moved from, but they're not originally from the United States now. They came overseas, and he's been in Knoxville. I think he said something like 5-6 years or something like that. But I like him a lot as a person. That doesn't even speak to what I like to him as an athlete. As you said, he's a very good player. I think it would be really good if Tennessee was able to get him, even if they did get a guy like Munden. I still think Collie should still hopefully be able to find a role for him, or a spot for him in this class. We're going to see some guys decommit and some of the guys move on, so there's probably going to be some room. But as we talked about last podcast, Tennessee's playing the numbers game. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, and who they do and don't have room for in this class because of all that. But I think I'll go ahead and we'll end that one there, Brandon. And hopefully you all really like this podcast, and it was a lot of in-state talk. Tennessee again gets another commitment from Hudson Wolfe. I don't know that there's really anyone to kind of keep an eye on into the coming days or weeks that's supposed to be announcing that Tennessee's really involved with yet. So this might be the last commit Tennessee gets for a little bit, which is kind of weird to say after you had that month there where Tennessee got like 16, 17 commits, and it seemed like almost every day Tennessee was getting someone. But as of now, Tennessee has 24 commits in the class. Their average recruiting ranking is right on par with what it was last class, and just slightly under what it was in the 2019 class. So Pruitt and company being very consistent with who they're bringing in, the kind of ratings they're getting for these guys. And I think 247 Sports is supposed to be doing some sort of update, I believe, later this week. And I know I wrote on RTI about Miles Campbell, one of the analysts, I think Charles Power of 247 Sports, that he's due for a bump. I think Hudson Wolfe's going to get a little bit of a bump on 247's rankings. So it's two guys that are currently committed to Tennessee who could be moving up the rankings and maybe even further boosting Tennessee's their overall kind of average score per recruit. But we'll end that here. Thank you all again for listening to the RTI Recruiting Podcast. Before we go, though, Brandon, I want you to plug some stuff that you guys have at VR2. You've been doing I know y'all have been doing a lot of series of looking at some of Tennessee's most important players for the upcoming season. I know y'all have been able to interview a lot of 2022 prospects as well. So go ahead and let the listeners know what you guys have at VR2 and what you guys have planned as well.
Well, please come check us out, take a look at what we're working on. We've got all your content on Hudson Wolfe today, what he brings to the table, a more in-depth look of what we talked about today. It'll be that way for anybody that Tennessee decides to bring in. We've been talking, we had an article come out today about Tennessee's 10 most wanted. Who are the 10 most wanted guys the Vols have got left on the board that are out there? You can come take a look at that. There's going to be some basketball content coming up soon. I've got a couple things that I'm working on for that. We've been doing interviews with 2022 players as well. Really just trying to get out there, keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on, and keep you all updated with everything you need to know. You can find us on Twitter at _VR2_. On Facebook and Instagram, you can just search for us at VR2. I'm Brandon at VR2, so you can find me there on Twitter. But anything that you need as far as where Tennessee's looking in this class, how guys are developing. Once guys start getting back on campus, we're going to be talking about what we're seeing in practice, who's playing where, what that development looks like. So we'll be ready. We'll have stories coming for you, and hopefully getting ready for the season to start on time. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's a big hopefully. I hope so too. That'd be very nice to have a nice break and be able to watch some football when we're supposed to in September, October, November. So hopefully that's the case. Again, check it out. That's VR2. It's part of the Sports Illustrated family. We are RockyTopInsider.com and Rocky Top Insider on all social media platforms. And again, thank you all so much. Signing off for Brandon, I am Nathaniel, and this has been another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast.